Hi everyone, welcome to Psychedelic Conversations. This is your hub for engaging in deep conversations around serotonergic hallucinogens that alter perceptions, affect cognitive processes, induce mystical and spiritual experiences. Enjoy the show. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Psychedelic Conversations podcast. I have with me today Luc, founder of the Psychedelic Insights, and I cannot wait to dive into his story. Welcome, Luc. So amazing to have you.
Yeah, Susan, it's very, very nice. I'm very looking forward to our talk. Thanks for having me.
Great. Thanks for accepting the invitation. So you're from Netherlands and founder of the Psychedelic Insights. You're a veteran, Marine Corps veteran. Entrepreneur, plant medicine advocate, speaker, dad, and adventurer. So, what we'd like to go into first is your story. How did you come into the psychedelic space? If you don't mind, if you can just kind of walk us through your background.
Sure. There's two sides of it. First of all, my own psychedelic experiences, and then the run-up to me performing therapeutic work, which I was doing previous to working with psychedelics professionally. And that constituted primarily of a long period in which I did workshops in youth penitentiaries and about mental well-being, your emotional household, and giving hands and feet to the understanding of their own frustrations and anger or hopelessness, and really to have them believe in themselves. And increasingly also schools asked me to be a speaker on mental well-being. But yeah, I more or less rolled into trip guiding. It started in my own private circle with some people with a less fortunate background than myself, with trauma, and yeah, I learned a lot from it. And actually, before that happened, actually in 2013. I was actually working as an international marketing manager for a financial startup, and I'd been doing that type of work for a while. And yeah, it really wasn't turning me into a happy camper actually. So it was like, be careful what you wish for, climbing that ladder, and yeah, I've never had any real experience with psychedelics in my life. I was always really straight and more into sports, and I enjoyed a beer, but I never really touched psychedelics until a friend started to explain about psilocybin and also ayahuasca. And then I had only done psilocybin mushrooms when they were legal here, and truffles, but not in any therapeutic way or any respectful way, really, to understand its larger potential. And then in 2013, I had some portions of high dose truffles, and also a really life-changing experience with ayahuasca. And yeah, at one point I found myself in a crossroads, and I started to do this type of work. And I saw such tremendous leaps in people's healing process and understanding of their own emotions compared to the therapy I was doing with just talking and walking in nature with people. You can change lifestyle, but you cannot change the neurology really that people are stuck in. And working with psychedelics, yeah, they go into such a deep level that I understood that I needed to work with other guides as well, who were more equipped and better educated than myself to do this type of work. And today I'm working with neurologists and psychologists and people that study positive psychology and spiritual care, with all having their own psychedelic experiences, but also very experienced trip guides, obviously. And with us, they provide integration therapy, and they help with the intention setting, and of course the actual guiding that we provide for individuals, and in the near future for small groups with high dose truffles, and that's 30 grams and up, depending, on the preferences of the person, and we advise in that process.
And thank you so much for the background story. So does this, do you offer in a retreat setting? How does it work?
Yes, we used to have a couple of centers, but we had to pull the plug on those with COVID. Most of our clients, they come from all over the world. So with the travel restrictions, we had to really cut costs and prepare for what is happening now. The lifting of the travel restrictions. So we have chosen to organize retreats, and within the coming months we will be sending out dates and invitations to people publicly, so they can actually go to these retreats, which we will guide, and they will vary, between 3 to 5 or 7 day retreats for specific audiences too. And there will be locations in nature and guided by our team.
Yeah, of course. So there's a team of professionals, experts in the field, psychologists, as you said earlier, positive psychologists, spiritual guides are actually working with you. You must have a very strong team doing this work.
Yes, I'm very privileged to work with the professionals that are actually doing the work on an academic level. Two neurologists that we work with, one is already has a PhD, and one is working towards it. We have people that have a lot of experience also with guiding ayahuasca sessions in Brazil, who are now, in our team, using their multi-skilled background to the table that we can all learn from, and this is how we deploy them. And it's mostly a team of a male and a female guide to any individual, or sometimes a couple of people.
I see. And what's the maximum capacity for your retreats? How many? Is it a group? Like, what's the maximum group number?
Yeah, we try to cater it to really keep it personal, because we like the real authenticity. For this, we don't exceed groups of 10, but most of the times we even have smaller groups, up to 5 and 6. And the last couple of years, it was mostly one-on-one, or actually two-on-one sessions that we provided to our clients.
Yeah. And do you see more value in that? Because I know that currently we're observing mainstream really writing a lot about, publishing a lot about, healing benefits of psychedelics coupled with therapy. Did you see any changes once you started coupling with therapy, integration, and preparation? Did that change? Because, from my understanding, only a couple of years ago, or maybe longer, like integration wasn't really spoken about, preparation, coupling with therapy wasn't really spoken about. But currently, thanks to the neuroscientists and a lot of people in the field, they're coming up with studies where they are showing that coupling with therapy actually impacts far more, and there's more positive outcomes and results with that approach. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a very good point. This is absolutely right. We don't just sit there while someone takes a high dose of psychedelics. We have at least 3 preparation calls before we actually meet our clients. So we have a good relationship and a good understanding of their intention settings and their background, and we have to check their medication and medical and mental health background as well. So if all lights are on green, we've have explained how the psychedelic works, who our team is, what we do, and their own personal wishes of the things they want to gain or let go in these type of experiences. And then we will meet, so we won't be strangers on the day. And then we decided a long time ago to actually include in the price 3 integration calls with our therapists to really frame it in a a little more therapeutical, if you will, because a lot of times these experiences can shed light on yeah, emotional processes, uh, and you can actually break habits, due to the neuroplasticity that can happen. And it's a time for coaching, and it's also a time to keep people in a positive and compassionate frame of mind. So if you're trying to work on your anxieties or another personal challenge, that you remain compassionate with yourself when sometimes things don't happen immediately, and it's always a process, and sometimes people can have high expectations, and we try to make that more realistic, and guide people by the hand, and have real open and authentic conversations with people, and how they can apply whatever they wish for in their intention. So that's really the most important step, where every experience can differ. So in this intention setting, some people want to know if their loved ones were in a good place, or want contact with ancestors. But some people also would like to break free from certain thought patterns that they've had for a long time. And a lot of times people have gone the route of a psychologist, etc., and need sometimes even medications for stuff. But for us, it's a challenge to really keep people safe, to not over glorify these experiences, uh, because we believe that because of this expanded consciousness, that you go inside, that you get a more clear vision of your personal situation emotionally. And I think that's why we are called psychedelic insights, because it's the insights that can do the healing, but it's you that has to do the work. It's not some compound like you see in the press, that you take a pill and then it cures something. It is your own willingness and openness to see inside of you what it is that is unhealed, what it is that is holding you back. And as soon as you have a compassionate process and you can embrace these types of steps in your self development, this is really what makes it a very positive experience. And therefore we work with natural and legal truffles that are grown under sterile conditions. And yeah, so we are really pleased with that, with the outcomes that we have with our clients.
Amazing stuff. Thank you. And being in Netherlands, of course, you are in advantage because you are in a country where mushrooms are legal, right? That must.
The truffles are legal. The mushrooms have been banned in 2008.
Oh, so the mushrooms are not legal.
No, not anymore. No.
Yeah,
So,
just the truffles. Okay.
The truffles, yes.
Yeah.
They're
Can you
part of the fungus.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk to us? I was just going to say, and then you just told us. Yeah, please talk about what's the difference, because I'm sure a lot of our listeners have, very confused understanding of, like, because mushrooms can be, it's a huge family of different strains. And talk to us a bit more about the truffles. How are they different?
They are all part of the fungi family. However, just like the bulb is not the tulip and vice versa, the mushroom is, of course, well known historically. It is the fruit of the fungus. And when the mycelium is in a sort of hibernation or survival mode, they become little chunks, little balls, if you will. And those are the truffles. As with the famous truffle, they grow underground. And they are grown in this condition, and they contain a higher dry mass, which actually has the psychoactive component to it. So they have a more consistent presence of psilocybin, which is about 1.1 to 1.4 per fresh gram of truffle. And it's more irregular with the mushroom, which mostly contains moisture. That's why they are so effective when they are dried.
Okay, so what would you
status here in the Netherlands? I'm sorry, and so they are actually EU registered for food and safety as food. So we treat it as a psychoactive food supplement. technically, legally.
Wow, Netherlands so far ahead of in this space when it comes to the psychoactive meds. Like, I know marijuana has always been illegal, and yeah. What do you think it is? If you look at all the nations, Netherlands somehow they have more. Is it more open-mindedness? What is it that you think you are seeing here?
Difficult question, very political. I don't think, yeah, well, we are just extremely lucky to have these laws, and they're mostly, I think they come from the 60s or 70s, but I'm not even sure. But like cannabis is not even legal; it's just decriminalized, you know. So,
Decriminalized.
but everyone knows Amsterdam for the coffee shops because they are called coffee shops and not called weed or dispensaries or anything like this. And the back door, you know, the supplier route is illegal, but they can sell it over the counter, which is illegal. So it's a very, very strange compromise. And and mushrooms were banned in 2008. I think under pressure of the French consulate because of an incident with the French girl that fell off or jumped off of a building in Amsterdam. And so yeah, so. Obviously, there's an industry of online shops and smart shops in Amsterdam and in big cities in the Netherlands that used to provide mushrooms. First also dried, then just fresh, and now just truffles. Ayahuasca was banned a couple of months ago, actually last year,
Wow.
because of an incident with Iboga. You know, so the whole field is not about science and logic; it's more about sentiment. And I think the scientific community and the political community yeah, they are there. Everyone is in an interesting time where the whole field is sort of fragile, and yeah, we have to also follow the rules, you know, because most of the research is done with psilocybin. We work with natural truffles. We can't draw the same conclusions, although you know, for someone that doesn't know any better, or for journalists, it's easy to make these claims, and it really yeah, upsets the legal position that a lot of these companies operate in. And yeah, our business has grown to actually try and embrace officially, legally, everything that we do, uh, and and still not medicalize it, because yeah, I like to really go the route of consciousness, and this is where you know, even with mystical experience, science has a hard time, you know, crunching the feedback from those experiences in any measurable way. And I think, yeah, that this is also what helps people, that you have an enhanced consciousness that you can apply even for work, for your relationship, for your past trauma, and really view your internal processes in a way that provides insight in any healing way, that you can know, that you can put things to rest, that you can feel at peace. And these are the type of experiences that I relate to temporal enhanced consciousness. And because people are so vulnerable and so open, that's why we actually guide. Because if you only reference is a couple of beers, yeah, some people are quite positively shocked by the fact that, you know, in their own words, you know, there's a whole world out there, a whole reality that is much more real than this one, or feels more real, and that's a shocker. You know it from ancient scriptures, or you hear the stories, and it's one thing to know that love is the answer. It's another thing to feel that love is an answer. You know, especially under psychedelic conditions, it touches people in a very profound way.
Yeah, I love that explanation. I call that feeling it in the bones. You know, when you know something intellectually, you know, but feeling it in the bones changes everything, right? I think this is what you're speaking to. It's a very different thing, two separate things, to know something and feel for like almost for the first time with fresh eyes. Yeah. There's so many threads I want to pick up, Luc. Gosh, I want to go back so much. You said you just gave us so much wisdom here. So firstly, I'm hearing from your tone that harm reduction is absolute necessity. Harm reduction is the way forward when we're handling any type of hallucinogenic, entheogenic, or any psychoactive substances, this is the rule of harm reduction. We have to make sure there's a, we need to, we must screen the person that wants to come to the exploration, their intention, what's the calling to this experience, and then what is it they want to change, heal, transcend, move forward. And then there has to be integration, and then there has to be check-ins, because I heard Rick Dublin talk about integration. I mean, I think MAPS Canada has been doing the most work in terms of integration, and I heard him speak to having an MDMA assisted therapy, but then they have it 3 times, and then in between there are lots of check-ins, and then after that there's 3 check-ins, and there's so much going on behind the scenes that are absolutely necessary for the person to feel safe, also receive the benefits, also make sense. It's not just one thing, is it? There's so many threads when it comes to psychedelic exploration. Yeah,
absolutely. It is not for the lighthearted. It's a real step into something unknown, and still people are nervous when they take this step, and I think people are very brave to take this step. Central to everything that we do is the safety of our clients, so the people we work with. Secondary, also the people that of our staff, of course, because they go hand in hand. That's one of the reasons we always work in teams, and also to get to know a client much better. We have almost never had any incidents, except when people have omissions, consistent omissions about certain aspects, and so only one time did we have this, that someone felt more nervous afterwards, but there were a lot of circumstances there. So the screening is very important, and we are supported by the Reconscious group in the US. We have people check their medications if they're on medications. So this is a whole process, with multiple calls where a lot of it is addressed. And we follow the procedures, and we follow the latest science when it comes to the contraindications and other guards, or ethics that come along. And when it comes to the taking of the truffles, we take it very sincere, this moment where we learn about the history, the biological history of the truffle and the mushroom and the fungi on Earth, and it's a whole kingdom unto itself. It's actually even the mycelium connects every living organism almost in the forest, So, and then we are about to take this, and it's not just their roots; it's also their neurological system, and the wisdom or the spirit, if you will, from this truffle is something that we also put at the forefront. So you're not just popping a pill. It's actually something sacred. And I think together with all other communities, we are rediscovering our connection to these ancient methods that can bring us wisdom and insight and healing. And because I think historically we have forgotten this, I think since the Romans, and therefore only the remainder of these cultures, like in Mexico, were picked up again. And I mean, the biggest motivator for me is the effects I see in the people just coming down from their experience. Their faces are just full of peace. The all stress is gone, and everyone is getting an experience that they couldn't have imagined. And so this is highly rewarding work, and I'm really privileged to also have worked as a guide, and I still do. But at the same time, we have to also professionalize. So I'm looking forward to working more with professional therapists that have done their own process in psychedelics, that have had a classical education, as well as a lot of professional experience as a guide, because those are they complement each other. They are not. You don't learn how to trip guide even as a psychiatrist, I guess. And so the words that you use and the metaphors that you use and how to explain or how to feel have people feel heard, they can differ obviously per guide, and we have this interdisciplinary team, so we learn a lot from each other, and we administer and document what we do to really keep the best outcomes possible.
Sounds wonderful. I just want to go back again to another thing you said earlier. So you took recreationally in the beginning, you didn't really understand them, but then when you begin to take them ceremonially or in a sacred way, the effects are very different. I think we are hearing more and more about this a lot. Some of the leading companies, especially in the US, I see US as a leading frontiers of the psychedelic space, and I'm seeing so many companies like I don't want to mention too many names, but there are so many companies in the US that are advocating the sacredness, the indigenous traditional way of using rather than recreational. And I also feel like, you know, they say we lost a lot of time. There is a thing about psychedelics kind of dropping into the scene in the 50s, and then it was kind of illegalized. Then we had this decades of no psychedelic, all underground, but not really talked about, not really done much with it. However, we do know now that it never stopped. It never stopped. It went underground, and people like Dr. Fadiman, Dr. Stan Grove, I mean, they just kept going. They kept going, developing different ways, different studies, different processes. And I'm thinking now, I feel like back in the 50s, the difference for me, I'm observing the differences. And in the 50s, it was all about, because we weren't equipped, because we didn't know how to handle, maybe we didn't have the culture around it, we didn't understand what this is all about, you know, these substances just dropped into the modern world. And now I'm seeing a very different process. I'm seeing a very different world of psychedelics. Some people call it psychedelic renaissance, but I'm seeing a very different approach. We are trying to bring therapy into it. We are trying to bring all these care, harm reduction, all kinds of things. But if we compare the 50s, it was just about drop in, you know, tune out, all that. But now it's like, no, don't do that. Make sure you do your research. Make sure you go to a safe person, safe environment, facilitator, and all that. What are your thoughts on that?
In the time in which they were criminalized in a very sudden and very unscientific way, in a very political way, when they were sending conscripts to die for capitalism in Vietnam, you had the same outburst of psychedelics in society on the other side of the spectrum. I think it made politicians very uneasy and hard to sell patriotism this way. And that's just a fact that we have to learn to live with. I think everyone is still indoctrinated by the machine, and because they were illegally made criminalized to the extent that a lot of third world countries will punish you to death. You know, if you have one miniature gram of anything in your luggage, for instance, it's very scary as a Dutch person. We now see the medicalization as a escape from this political move that criminalized psychedelics. If we look into our past, there's a lot of evidence hinting at the use of psychedelics from the ancient Greeks, Tibetans, Egyptians, Mayas, Aztecs, and the Celts. And And I think that we can find that way back. And medicalizing it is one way. I like to see science do more with consciousness, because that what they call placebo effect is actually, positive thinking and manifesting a healthy way. And so I think there's a paradigm shift coming. I would love to see more studies, especially on natural shrooms and natural truffles, because society is better served with that. All these patents that are coming out, yeah, that's great for the traditional distribution channels of pharmacos, but how is that going to look when also shrooms become legal, or are shrooms remaining illegal, and can you only get it as via a medical thing? I think it's about human consciousness and the freedom to experiment with it, and I think uh, we are just fortunate to work with these in the Netherlands. And just the idea of me taking them and having, the police having an opinion about it would feel absolutely absurd. But obviously, that's the reality in most countries and states. And I think that's very sad. The positive thing is that there is so much development that I can only embrace it. And I think that what is happening is that people are getting less skeptical that about ways to heal trauma and to address these global pandemics of depression, anxiety. Uh, there's a lot of mental health issues in the first world. It's about 20%, and
Yeah.
I think that if you introduce consciousness to, via psychedelics to society, I think people will have a more clear picture of who they are, where they stand, and their purpose in life. And I think that should be a human right. At the same time, I don't think they should put LSD through the drinking water. It should be well managed, and it's always a difficult route to keep the public safe and to allow access. In the Netherlands, for instance, it's illegal to process anything with psilocybin. So the truffles, in a natural way, they are legal. But if I were to process it and turn it into chocolate bars, obviously, any kid would jeopardize themselves immensely, if you do it that way. So those type of things, seem very logical, and I hope that yeah, together and lawmakers being well informed have that interest, the public interest at heart, and not solely those of yeah, profit driven motivations. Yeah, if you see that, you always see that. We can expect it here in the Netherlands as well.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, I think it's an exciting time, and I hope it remains incident free. And
Yeah.
so far, it's if you compare it to regular legal medications that cause a lot of deaths per year, I think the use of psychedelics is in a very different corner. But yeah, it requires skill sets to guide people. It doesn't fit the normal medical infrastructure or paradigm even, and that makes for an interesting time, an interesting future.
Yeah, yeah, it is definitely interesting times right now. And would you say that with the medical, I see the medicalizing psychedelics is going to be the portal for it to kind of come through in a more stronger, mature way than it did in the 50s. And I feel like the more clinical psychologists, doctors, neuroscientists step in, the more studies, the more positive outcomes being published. I think slowly we can educate and then eliminate the stigma, maybe to an extent, and hopefully kind of instill some responsibility, maturity, and understanding about the psychedelic. Because I feel like the more they stay underground, the more there is a stigma, the less we are educated and less confused about how to handle them. And I think maturity plays a massive role. With education definitely going to help us a lot as a collective in the modern world. And you said something earlier that's very, very profound. You said if you look at all the past, indigenous people in the history, a lot of nations have used it, and now we're in this modern world, disconnected, it's individualistic driven, so kind of conditioning environment that we live in a modern world. And I'm observing more and more disconnection, more and more isolation. And I mean, I read the article years ago by, was it the World Health Center? They said by 2025, depression will be number one. I think it's absolutely true, especially the isolation pandemic. Now we're in a post-pandemic. People are being isolated, and they are literally being confronted with the deepest fear of being alone. And I feel like in the modern world, this is paradoxically, people, as much as they love their freedom, as much as they love their own space, and they have their own, you know what I mean. There is less community, yeah, because in the modern world, we're less community centric. We're less of a tribalism. There is no kind of collective togetherness. And now, paradoxically, we are so used to this type of living, but suddenly this becoming a problem. And I know a lot of people are going to develop PTSD and all kind of host of mental illnesses. We're probably going to see more and more in the next few years, because we can't, it's a bit like the digital, it's a bit like the social media, how the experts say, we don't really understand yet how this is going to impact the young generation. It's almost like we don't really know how this pandemic will be impacting us in the next few years. It's an unknown territory, right? But all we can say is that it's going to be quite dramatic.
Yeah, I think if people zoom out and have more room for contemplation, ultimately people will start asking the real questions, the big questions. Who am I? What am I doing here? What is my purpose? Yeah. And I think, it's very tragic that we live in times where a lot of the middle class and small businesses have been forced to go through horrible times financially, and I hope that we can come out of this stronger on a level that we are extending help to others and bringing people together, because we've just seen a long time of division, and scaremongering, and even with COVID, it's people pro or anti-vaccination, and all our ideas about where it comes from and if it's warfare or not. And I think there's a lot of disturbance, and I think if we can bring people together, if we learn from each other, also speaking as a business owner, we're trying to set up actual observational studies with a scientific team. And I would love to see that reach beyond my own clients for others to collaborate, because I think we need more bridges between people. Scientists are concerned with the work that we do, and we might wish more focus on different areas that scientists do. And I think we should collaborate more and build more relationships so we can all work on this together to keep everyone safe. And we can't always wait for everything to be proven when things are already legal and for sale on every street corner. We just guide people in a safe way, so it is, there's a lot of concern. It's a very slippery slope. It is working with people that are very vulnerable and in a very emotional state. And everyone has a very different narrative and story and background. And you can never predict the outcome of these experiences. You can only try and use certain metrics and a lot of interaction for the screening of clients to keep people safe. So it always comes back to safety. If it's for society, if it's for clients, or even for businesses like ours, I think it's important, because people are not always going to go the medical route. If you look to the United States, having a medical insurance has a it's unlike other capitalistic countries. we are fully medically insured. It's not rocket science. Uh, Obviously, people are going to do it outside of the medical system. And I also don't like to see it medicalized. It's just a route out of illegality, because why are these compounds on these lists? Because they were said to be toxic, addictive. Well, they're all, they're exactly the opposite of all of the above. And when you have problems in society that are actually, facilitated almost by the pharmaceutical industry, like the opioid crisis, it's time for change. It's time for healing. And yeah, we also need to mention the elephant in the room, that not all structures, as we inherit them, are beneficial to us as a society.
Yeah.
Because division and disinformation, uh, yeah, has cost us a lot. What healing is, what dis-ease is, what this does for people. I think it's a time of change that we live in, and science is leading the way, but legislators are also representing the people. And I think that we need more heroes, the people that really go for their own program and that are really in touch with what is happening on the ground. And yeah, you mentioned I'm a vet. That's correct. A lot of people are suffering, and I think a lot of organizations exist, like for instance, Heroic Hearts. They're doing such great work. It's just. I hope they do well. I hope they find a corporate sponsor, so they can, so some guy does something good for a lot of people, and so we can do this safely, scientifically measured, so we can learn from these experiences. So we all collaborate where legal to science, and at the same time see what works, and how we should update these protocols to benefit people. And I think if you start to heal groups in society that have been marginalized in the past and historically, I think it is time that these compounds, and these type of services that we do, they play a role in this reconciliation and in these times of change.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Beautiful. How do you feel about Rick Doblin's um, proposal about that? There is he wishes for coming out of the closet, where he believes that most of the influencers, leaders, there's so many people that running, these kind of structures are actually psychedelic users, and he really wishes for everyone to come out their closet and really do something together. I think you said the similar thing earlier. We need to come together, whether it's science, whether it's just an ordinary shaman, whether it's ordinary trip sitter, or somebody who's had the experience, enough experience and maturity with it. I really like. And how do you feel about, I also heard, I think it was another podcast, they said the reason the psychedelics are really making their way back again is because the original generation that who legalized and criminalized in the 50s and 60s and 70s, they are dying, and there's new fresh blood is coming, emerging, and this new generation, they're very smart in their moves. They're becoming scientists, they're becoming lawyers, they're kind of positioning themselves in those structures so that they can start having a say, and they are mostly psychedelic enthusiasts and advocates. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We work well. I'm in my 50s, in my early 50s. Sometimes I still feel 9 years old, but yeah, I'm very privileged to work with much younger guides who have made it their life's mission as well. To study neurology or psychology, to work with the medicine for their own personal healing, maybe initially, but ultimately, I think we all share the same mission. This is what I think high dose psychedelics do. If you had the chance, I think that yeah, it's a privilege to be able to facilitate this, and we're lucky to do so in this legal framing that we have here in the Netherlands. And I think providing safe access to a wider audience, I think is the best way to serve society that I can come up with. And this
Yeah,
is what I'm trying to structure in a legal and in a safe way.
absolutely. And your stance on the legalization, because I heard, I think it was Hamilton Morris, he said, they asked him the same question. What are your stance when it comes to, should psychedelics, all of the substances should be available and legal? And he kind of hesitated to answer. He said he kind of leans towards yes, but then he says that coming from a chemist background, he understands that how people can be very irresponsible.
Yes, people will always be people.
Yeah.
So that's one. Um, the more psychedelics are used, you know, mathematically, the more incidents you are likely to occur. You know, so um, I don't know if the route should be psychedelics, you know, via your medical doctor, you know, your general practitioner. Here in the Netherlands, these truffles, they are for sale, you know, quote unquote, on every street corner. They do not register on the National Drug Monitor in terms of uh, people causing a riot or disturbances or ambulances that are required, etc. Uh, it's much more, alcohol is a much more bigger problem to society and much more costly. I personally think that you only make one mistake with psilocybin before you learn to respect it. and, and certainly I belong to that category. and and so it is interesting to look at these different existing models and see what the effect is on society, uh, because it's not really used, you know, and even cannabis use in the Netherlands is way lower than where it's restricted. You know,
Yeah.
it's the same as alcoholism in Scandinavia, where beer costs you 15 euros. You know, so wherever you have a repressive regime, it's first going to bounce back up. You know, so I think this is also the environment that we live in. It was never repressed, so it's like, you know, it's just a choice that you can do.
Yeah.
Obviously, everyone in society suffers from the stigmas that have been promoted, and the fear that it has caused. And I think we are all working on destigmatization, and I think science is leading the way. And I think journalists are having a ball, you know, with drawing conclusions, with headlines between ad blocks. But it makes it difficult also to work in this environment where making medical claims is not very beneficial, you know, for our work and even for clients, because we don't want to be seen as a clinic where you can just get rid of your depression or your lifelong anxieties. It just doesn't work like that. And you can never really enter the door or the road of self-development without ever stopping, and especially not if you increase your consciousness on your own psychological mechanisms, if you will. Then you become more adept in questioning your thoughts and analyzing, you know, what's right or wrong, or nothing may be right and wrong. It's just a happening. You victimize yourself, you know, and these are all just steps to be taken in these personal emotional journeys of people.
Yeah, yeah, I love that explanation. Thank you so much. One quick question, just want to squeeze this in there. You know, now that we're seeing a lot of, how can I say, medicalization, let's say, now we are becoming aware, like currently I'm seeing so many companies are getting ready to provide training for those who are in the modern world, who are maybe in the therapy space, you know, counseling, psychotherapy, so they can train to become psychedelic assisted therapists. So now we have this thing, and I mean, I don't really have any sides. I mean, I don't really stand on either side, because, you know, then you will meet somebody from an indigenous culture and they might say yes, but these shouldn't be facilitated by those people who are just coming in from a academic
Yeah.
clinical psychology, and because these medicines are very sentient, they have the spirit, and the work is very different than the traditional psychotherapy. But then at the same time, I'm thinking, okay, that's great, but this is just thinking out loud here with you. That's amazing. But then if you look at all of the references and some of the anecdotal reports that people from the West going to the Peru, Costa Rica, to the indigenous cultures where they take ayahuasca, and sometimes they come back more damaged because they don't understand this world of the sacredness. Like you said even earlier, yes, you might make one mistake to really start respecting the substances, but sometimes, I mean, my own experience, I've met so many people who have taken over and over again, it still hasn't grasped the sacredness, the way the indigenous people teach us, the sacredness, ceremonial, ritualistic way of using. And then I had another friend that we spoke on one of these podcasts, and he said, it's only in the West that people are using it for trauma healing. He said, in my culture, like his lineage, he said we use it to speak to gods and spirits and guides, because divination, or maybe even find an object, like this is a very new territory in the West where people are coming to psychedelic for healing. Can you please speak to that? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, there was a couple of parts in your story. Yeah, I think first of all, looking through the scientific lens or the medical lens to these substances provides just one perspective. It is how it can heal and the effect in comparison to what we think traditionally works for specific afflictions. So, these are medical doctors or scientists that provide, serotonin reuptake inhibitors to people that are depressed. I'd rather see them, develop warm, close relationships, change their diet, go for long walks in nature, and count stars. And I think warm, safe relationships to start with for people is really a prerequisite for any type of healing. So and I think people's journeys in life are just so very different. I've learned to never do any assumptions with what people have been through and what people's journeys are. So it's always a matter of being very careful and trying to listen carefully, and also listen between the lines where people are coming from. So no one said that psychedelics are for everyone. They certainly are not, and they are not an answer. They are a doorway. And you can knock on the door and you can have an experience. And if it's not for you, just hang up the phone. I know people that have done tens of, like more than 60 high doses, of certain compounds, and they are still broken flowers. And sometimes, how do you make sense of that? Oh, I don't, Yeah. And it is. I just know that if we work with more healthy normals, and that includes sometimes people that have had, 20% of the people have had mental health challenges in their life. And, if you cope with grief, I think depression, is a common thing, the way they measure it now, with the DSM. And I think if you've had a very strict upbringing, or you have some self-worth issues or anxieties, I think most people have that. But I think if you stop seeing it as a disease and just as a condition of the human experience, I think that consciousness can shed its warm light on this, and then you can relax in and recognize what you truly are. And I think this type of approach, need not be medicalized per se. And I think there's a lot to gain there.
Yeah, great. And what are your thoughts on psychedelics? Is do you think, like, raising consciousness, would you say psychedelics just one tool? Because there are many ways of raising consciousness.
Yes,
and like, even the breath work, right? It could be anything. Some people actually get there with the breath work, so it's very doable. would you say that the change comes with awareness, not so much what tools we use, but more about the self-awareness?
Well, this is also much more normal to talk about self-development with younger people. I think certainly my generation, I think we had a totally different experience. We grew up without internet still,
Mm.
and talking about self-development or trauma is such a destigmatized topic with young people that it's almost strange if you don't do it. But try to find an easygoing, open-minded 40-plus-year-old. I think you're going to have a hard time. And I think, and this is just the conditioning of the challenges that the modern society places on us. With job security and everything that goes with it, the financial stresses, the pandemic doesn't help. So the role of consciousness in the human experience is something that I would welcome a lot. I would love to see science embrace it and dive into it, uh, and because it changes our collective worldview. So if you are talking, for instance, mystical experiences, there's there's going to be a lot of disconnect between how you quantify and measure these things, or how you even the words that you use to describe these types of experiences, because they can be very, for lack of a better word, religious, and we are just used to a range of words and connotations, that quantify certain descriptions, like God, or religion, and and I think if you destigmatize those types of things, it will become highly interesting, to reconsider what it is to be a human being, you know, and you cannot remain unaffected if you have a very deep experience with a psychedelic, because they do increase your consciousness and they allow you to see deep inside you, in a slowly disclosed subconsciousness where most of our pains reside. Uh, and we learn to cut corners and to put up with it and to man up and what have you, uh, to certainly not address those issues, to put a lid on it and to carry on and all this stuff. And I think it is a more we're seeing a new movement where we learn to go to the pain and embrace it and question where it comes from and which inhibitions or fears lie underneath, and really peel back those layers and really discover, what it means to develop. It's not envelopment, it's development,
Yeah.
so, and it's also dis-ease, so if it all starts between your metaphorical ears, I think metaphorically it's in our hearts, and we learn to disconnect with our feelings, because sometimes I think life is just too hard. And I think if you can get reconnected, and even if it takes these types of substances, that is a great good. But ultimately, historically, I like to jokingly say, yeah, you can dance around the campfire for 24 hours, and you can sit in a cave for 20 years, or go into the desert for how many days was it? And or you can do it for fasting and breathing, or combinations of all of the above, and have access to, yeah, quote unquote, your higher self or a higher consciousness. uh, and I think these experiences traditionally have a place in most religions, but we now live in a society that can actually provide these experiences to people on a personal level, and to enrich your life with these experiences. Yeah, for me, this is the biggest treasure of my own journey, is to experience these things, especially after a lifetime of happy-go-lucky and uh, and having a lot of life experiences, but also quite traditional. to find doors in your mind that can open worlds to you that, yeah, you just know from scriptures or movies or books, is an experience that has been the most profound that I know or that I can imagine. And
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think it is something that we should really take care of. Also with all the legalization, I don't know what the best route is. Every society chooses its own leaders. If you if you imagine that, I don't know what is right and what is wrong. We all will have to face the future. So yeah, I hope it will just go smooth and very responsible.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much. And what you said is so profound. Ultimately, we want to experience these experiences to be probably better at the mundanity of life, not so much stay in the mystical experience, or like you said, because even the, like going to a temple, going to desert, going places can only serve, yes, they're great for insights, but then your work is to come back into your normal, you know,
Yes.
consciousness and baseline, where you have to be good at doing the boring things as well, and
Yeah.
really embracing those as well, not dismissing, right? This is the challenge.
Exactly, because yeah, like the Zen Buddhists say, before enlightenment, chopping wood; after enlightenment, chopping wood. And
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the thing. We are all on this stage, on this theater of life, on this Garden of Eden in a vast dead universe. What is our role and what are we doing? you
Yeah.
know I think we're skipping this question.
Mm.
and it's
Yeah.
and it's a sad thing to only question it on your deathbed, and tell everyone, I'm so sorry, please forgive me, or forgive others, and tell them that you wish you spent your life, with your loved ones, instead of chasing a corporate ladder where you ultimately didn't get a pat on the back. you know and to reevaluate what is important in life. And it's one thing to think that, yeah, love is the answer, but it's another thing to live it, and to try and build this world that we want for the future of our children, I guess.
I love that. Is knowing is one thing and embodying is a whole thing,
Yes,
whole
exactly.
new, yeah, work. Amazing. All right, one last question. Where do you think we're going with this psychedelic movements in the next, let's say next couple of years? I don't want to say too far ahead in the future, but let's at least next couple of years.
Well, we are already seeing a lot of decriminalization and legislation changes in all these different states in the US. I think the first state to actually legalize shrooms will have an economic boom. Um, and yeah, so as an entrepreneur, I just hope we are building a better service. We are learning, we are collaborating, and we are seeing and experiencing what it takes to facilitate these sessions or retreats, in a safe and responsible way. Science is doing their part. I hope more resources will go there. I hope there will be studies done, that will also, will look to natural mushrooms and natural truffles, rather than just patent number 66, some variable on the molecule of psilocybin or psilocin. And because that will happen, it will all happen. And I don't think, it's good or bad. We just need to embrace it and navigate it, and see how things will develop. Things will go wrong, and we'll have to learn. And I think that will just be the way forward. But I really trust it. I think it's a remarkable time to be alive, to have the possibility to experience these, mystical compounds, and yeah, to regard them as portals, rather than, a medical pill that you can take. So
Yeah.
these portals, these doors that can open your awareness, your consciousness, and whatever psychedelic insight you have, yeah, it's up to you what happens then. So I trust the future. I think we are positioned in a unique time to do it right this time.
Yeah, amazing. So it's not a quick fix. It's a doorway to understand ourselves in a more cosmic level rather than this small, limited mind that we have. We cannot comprehend what's beyond this, right? And they can be the doorway. If we can just kind of look at it that way, uh, we can move further forward quicker, all of us, I think, as a collective.
Yes,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. So before I let you go, gosh, you have so much wisdom. I just want to keep you here. I know we're coming to the end of our conversation. As a facilitator guide, if somebody is interested in truffles, what would be your, like, if there was like 3 steps, for example, in harm reduction, in kind of giving them advice, what would it be?
Yeah, if you always make sure that you are in a safe place if you take psychedelics, that you inform someone that you are doing it. Preferably they can stay with you, but they may also be on call, you know. Make sure no strangers can walk into your space, you know. So those are some very basic guidelines. And you can also, you know, not take a dose in one go, you know. You can just dose yourself in steps, you know. Keep feeling where you're at. It's not always the best thing to dive off the deep end. And yeah, so that will be my advice initially.
Yeah, and basic is always the most profound advice. Basic, keep it to the basic, simple.
Yeah,
uh,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Because a lot of people are microdosing. It's really taking a large flight. So
Mm,
there's a lot of online shops that sell some microdosing packs, and it's not so intimidating. You know, you can take a half gram of truffles and have a great day, feel really connected, have great talks with people, be really animated and passionate about what you do. And more people are finding their way to microdosing, and I think it's a very safe doorway into this scary realm of psychedelics, you know, where we all think we're the reality is melting, you know. It's certainly not like this. It is really a place full of heartfelt emotions, and people feel scared of it. And still I do as well, you know, for high doses. My heart is pounding in my chest sometimes before I do it.
yeah.
But nature favors the brave, and I think it's a form of self-love to take the steps and to try and have a different experience of life, you know, by starting this journey of self-development. And
Mm,
psychedelics can play a role in this. Yeah.
yeah, a bit of courage, bit of bravery. Yeah.
Yes.
Open-mindedness. Yeah. Yeah. And find those others. Like, my advice always to people, like, how do you, like, find those others? Because I think Rick Dublin is just kind of kicking off a psilocybin study in a group setting, and I love that, because coming from a holistic therapy background, I do value the level of impact or the positive outcome that we can receive when we're in a group setting, community centric, trusted space, safe container, all of those things and more. I think somehow psychedelics are kind of bringing us back to that community centric spaces. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think traditionally it was done in groups. I
Mm-hmm.
think in a couple of centuries ago, actually beer and wine were psychedelic as well. I think
Mm,
we'll start to realize that psychedelics played a way bigger role in our history than we are willing to admit, and it is reclaiming its place in our society and the human experience.
yeah,
So yes,
absolutely. I would say so. And I heard on an article, psychedelics, like somebody was saying, oh, all the biotech companies are moving in and they're going to make so much profit. And one guy was just like, don't worry, psychedelics have their own agenda. We
they
got
have
this.
their own agenda.
Yeah.
Exactly, and this is what going mainstream looks like. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
no use that only a few hula hooping hippies discovered, these compounds. It's much nicer if it's safely offered to a wider audience, that people can really increase their quality of life. I think it's very important.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much, Luke. It's been such a pleasure. Thank
too.
you.
Thank
So we will share your links and your resources in the comments for our listeners if they wanted to get in touch, and if they have the privilege to be in Netherlands, maybe they might find you. Who knows? And yeah, I'm sure we'll have you back again in the future to catch up with your development with the Psychedelic Insights. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this conversation with Luc, founder of the Psychedelic Insights. And if you have any questions, get in touch with him. We'll share all the links and resources below. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye for now. Much love. Thank you so much for joining us. Psychedelic Conversations podcast is designed to educate, inform, and expand awareness. For more information, please head over to psychedelicconversations.com. You can also share with your friends or leave a review so that we can reach more people. You can also join us in our private Facebook group to keep the conversation going. This show is for information purposes only, and it is not intended to provide mental health or medical advice. Thanks for listening.